as promised, let's take a look at the transmission, because it's not an AR5 anymore. In fact, it's not even manual anymore. So let's dig into that. Alright, so here we have it. This is a 4L60. Well, 4L60E, because technically it's the electronic version of the 4L60. So, why would I change from a manual transmission that had a triple disc setup, was going to be less parasitic loss than an automatic in favor of an automatic? Well, for the most part, this is a factory stock 4L60. This is like a 97, 98 4L60 with a bell housing that was initially behind the Trailblazers from the factory. So factory Trailblazers had a 4L60 behind them, but they were four-wheel drive versions, so they had a different rear housing, transfer case, all that stuff. So you can just unbolt this bell housing and bolt it onto the same sort of two-piece 4L60 that you can find in many other applications. So what I did with this one, because I don't want to have a computer control, I don't want to have a TCM, it's actually modified in the valve body way down underneath, and I'll input some pictures in of what we did. But the valve body was modified with a Transgo 4L60E-3 kit, which is essentially their highest end race kit, to where it takes away all electrical shifting. So everything is done manually by actuating the input shaft, well, the shift input shaft for the transmission. So it should have really fast shifts, fully controllable. My ECU has a programmable output that I can use to actuate the lockup in the torque converter, because without that I'm not going to have fourth gear. So I can use ECU to be the only electrical trigger for the torque converter lockup. So I should still have all four gears. I can manually control it. So the plan is to have, I found a Pro ratchet shifter, and I'm going to pneumatically actuate that through paddles, and use those paddles also as inputs into the ECU to allow it to do dynamic shift cut and certain things like that that should allow it to shift even faster. So that's the biggest thing why I switched to 4L60 over an AR5, is shift times should be much faster. And I mean, depending on the track that I go to, I mean, it's so variable on how many shifts you're going to do per lap, but if you start counting that up and you change shift times to, okay, let's say a few milliseconds per shift, that's going to equal a second real fast. I do not have the funds, nor do I want to have, well, I wish I had the funds, but it doesn't seem justifiable for me to put a sequential transmission in this. This is literally something I'm building in my garage. It's not race spec, I guess. I'm doing the best that I can, but it's not a professional team. I don't have unlimited funds, so we're not going to put a sequential in it, because those cost 10 to 20 grand, which is more than I have into everything in this car as it sits now, with almost all of the hardware to make it run and go ideally super fast. The other reason that I wanted to go from 3 pedals to 2 pedals is, if you see, we had to make a big cut to get this behemoth of an engine and transmission into this tiny car. So there's not a lot of room for my feet. That was actually the old clutch pedal that the previous owner put in, because this was a factory automatic car that they put a manual transmission into, so I still need to get that out. But that gives you an idea. One pedal there, straddle the column with it, and I'll just use left foot brake, right foot gas. I used to do that in the race car that I built when I was in college, so it'll just kind of be like riding a bike. It'll come back to me. So that's another big reason. It's because I literally don't have enough room to put 3 pedals down here. If I had a clutch pedal, it'd be probably over this bar, and that doesn't really work with hip alignment when you're driving because it's so far kicked to the left, it's like a dead pedal at that point. So we have brake, gas, and that's it. Another reason why we're going to this versus the AR5 is these are dirt cheap. Yes, the valve body kit costs some money, and I actually put in a Corvette servo on the other side. I'm doing everything that I can. This transmission has the best chance of survival. This car is really light. It'll always be really light. Torque output of that motor is pretty high, and once I put boost to it, it gets even higher. But AR5s have been known to die at around 6 to 650 torque, because that's what kills the gears inside. So the gears eat themselves, and I didn't want a lifetime transmissions and have to worry about them just shredding themselves. So plus upgrading an AR5 is not cheap. You basically have to use an R154 kit. Usually got them out of Australia. They're a couple grand just for the kit, not even installing them. And they basically just change the main gears, all your idle gears. They get them bigger teeth pitched, all of that stuff, so they survive. And I think they're good for like 1,000 newton meters of torque, so 850 foot-pounds, somewhere around there. So that would survive. It would do what it needed to do, but it's still not going to shift very fast. I still have to use 3 pedals, so it's not really going to work for this application. Plus, it's a lot of money. And again, 4L60 is pretty cheap. The valve body kit will probably never break unless for some reason the center housing of the trans decides to kill itself and shoot itself out the bottom, but that kit's $300. The servo's $30. So I could rebuild these, have spares if I wanted to for $500. But that's even if it even cares. It might not care at all. I mean, these came in Suburbans of all vehicles, and those weigh a ton. So the resistive torque and the torque output, that's what really breaks things. So this car being so light is going to help it a lot. That's the main. We went from an AR5 to a 4L60. They're cheap, they're readily available. AR5s are getting really, really hard to find, and when they do, they're expensive because people started putting them behind LSs. They put them behind a lot because they're small, they're easy to package. 2 pedals rather than 3 pedals. And plus, we get to have paddle shifters. Those are fun. So, the main reasons why I decided to go from an AR5 to a 4L60 in a track car application. Doesn't make sense. Automatics have more parasitic loss. Manual transmissions are usually much more responsive. They're not going to shift on you, but guess what? With a kit, you can get rid of that. You can control it all yourself. And my ECU has that spare output for that torque converter clutch lockup to get 4th gear, which I think is like 63 to 1 in this transmission. So it might be a little sluggish off the line or anything like that, but that's not what we're going after. So hopefully, maybe learn something, maybe didn't. I don't really know. But frankly, I'm just doing this to keep you guys all in the loop. So we're getting closer and closer to getting this thing started. Once it's started, it won't take long to get it driving. Just gotta do some tidying up here and there, brake lines, diff seals, stuff like that. But we're well on our way. So if you want to see more of the process, if you have any other questions, let me know in the comments. I can answer them, but be prepared if you answer a question that you think I don't have the answer to. I might just say because, or I don't know. So if you want to see how this car progresses, where we go from here, please subscribe. It means a lot, even though there's not that many of you, but I appreciate it. It makes me feel like what I'm doing actually maybe helps people, or maybe they learn something. So if that is all, See you in the next one.